All righty, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to see you all here this week. Last week we started diving into the book of Bereishis, and today we will continue that dive, and then we will continue that dive up until, I don't know, maybe sometime middle of next year. But it'll be a fun swim. So first of all, I just want to thank you all for coming out here. Please give yourselves a warm round of applause. I always say this may be the only round of applause you're going to get all day, so make it count. I also want to thank the amazing staff of Yeshiva Bet Yehuda, Partners Detroit and Prime 10 for putting on this beautiful lunch and learn every week. They come out here, they make amazing food, they set up so beautifully. It's really, really appreciated. Let's give them a round of applause as well. And now we've got so much...
Don't forget the Rabbi.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you very much. Thank you. We've got a lot to cover today, so I'm not even going to start with my random jokes in the beginning. We're gonna dive right in. We're going to dive right in because I want to cover today. I want to cover the original sin. I want to cover the original homicide. I want to cover nakedness. Right? No pun intended. I want to cover nakedness, and hopefully we'll cover. I think that'll pretty much carry us all the way through. Okay, let's start with the original sin. I didn't put any sources for you for the original sin because I think you're all pretty familiar with the narrative. The narrative is God puts Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. He says to them, you could eat anything you want, you just cannot eat this one tree. This one tree. Now you got to remember that the Medrash describes that the Garden of Eden was really like a paradise, meaning the weather was always perfect, right? Like here in Michigan, always perfect, right? The weather was always perfect. The food would come off the tree like almost like a full ready meal. I don't know if you know, but there's something fascinating. Do you know that there's a tree that produces a fruit called the breadfruit?
Yes.
There you go, yeah. So this was like, imagine you'd have a tree called the pastrami sandwich fruit, you know? And you take off, and by the way, I one time went to a vegan restaurant. No, I said one time. But they had, you could do amazing things with fruits and vegetables. I mean, absolutely remarkable things. I remember we got like this whole, like one of those kind of like Chinese inspired, we got a whole boat with all these different foods. You can do amazing things with fruits and vegetables. Obviously, Adam and Eve were vegans. Human beings were not allowed to eat meat until after the flood, which hopefully we'll cover when we get to the flood. So the food was coming off the tree perfect, delicious. You want a lemon meringue pie? Just go to that tree. You want a pastrami sandwich? Well, a food pastrami sandwich? Go to that tree. They had everything. And God says to them, eat whatever you want, mein Kind, right? Go ahead, eat away. Just don't eat that one fruit. Now, Adam and Eve were created on the 6th day of creation. Do you know how long it took them until they ate the fruit of the tree? A couple hours. A couple of hours. I mean, I know that's how it works with my children, right? You know, you tell them, no, you can't have that. You walk out of the room, you come back, there's like that all over their face, right? But this is Adam and Eve. They were of incredible high stature. The Midrash describes them as having this vision that could see from one end of the world to the next. They were giants of human beings. They did not yet even have an internal negative emotions, meaning the negativity came from externally. It was the snake that came to tempt them. There's talk about this, how the Yetzer Hara, the negative inclination, was not at first inside an internal voice. It was an external voice. The snake was coming from outside. If you think about it now, just to understand how internalized the negative inclination is, think about this. Let's imagine you're having a battle with yourself. Should you have a piece of cake or not? Okay? So one voice says, I want it. And the other voice says, yeah, but it's really not good for you. You shouldn't have it. And then the other voice says, yeah, but I need it. I'm just doing it. Now, who's the, right? Is that a normal narrative? It's a normal narrative, right? Okay. Now, who's the I? And who's the you? Meaning, the I voice is often the negative inclination saying, I just need it. I don't care. I need to treat myself right now. The negative inclination is the I, the first person speaker. And the positive inclination, the Yetzer Tov, is the second person. He's saying, you really shouldn't be doing that. No, but I need it. No, but it's not good for you. Remember what happened last time? You weren't happy. It's talking to you, whereas the negative inclination is the I. So think about how well integrated the negative inclination is today. But back in the day, the negative inclination was not internal at all. It was the outside voice, the voice of the snake. So they were people of an incredibly high stature. And yet they ate from the fruit. The one thing that God asked them not to do. The one thing. How do we understand this? And if we remember last week, we said when you want to look back at anything and understand where it comes from, look to the first time you find it in the Torah, and it will be the prototype for all further actions of that sort. So if we're looking at original sin, we're trying to understand what is the prototype of sin. Why do all of us sin? What's the internal mechanism that's going on when I decide to do something that I know is not really right? That I know is not really good for me? So we're going to go with of course, there are many commentators that talk about this. We're going to go with the response of the Michtav Eliyahu, Rabbi Eliyahu Lopian, Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler. He gives a parable. Or maybe he doesn't give the parable, but I'll give the parable. I don't remember if he gives the parable or not. I know he gives the answer. You have a king. And the king has a servant who's been his loyal servant for 35 years. And he's been there every day. He's every day since he's 5 years old. He was born in the kitchens. His mom and dad worked in the king's palace. And from the time he was 5, they gave him a peeler and said, peel. And he started with peeling and then cooking, and then he came into the service at the meal, and then he became a personal valet to the king. He's been a loyal servant to the king for 35 years. One day he's walking in the castle, and the king sees him, and the king says, Bob, you have been my most loyal servant for the last 35 years. Never ever do you question what I say. You are always there for me. You're always there for me with a smile. You started when you were 5, and I know that today's your birthday. Today's your 40th birthday, so I want to give you a special present. Here's what we're going to do. For just one day, you are going to feel what it's like to be a nobleman. We are going to have the royal tailors make you beautiful, bespoke suits and shirts. And there's a royal ball that I was invited to. I can't make it, but I'm going to send you. And you're going to go in a royal carriage with footmen helping you onto the carriage, and all the things that you've done for me over the years, I will have done for you. And the servant, he bows to the king. He says, my liege, my honor, your honor, that's too much. You're too kind. I don't need anything like that. I'm happy to serve the king. It's my joy, my pride to serve the king. I don't need that. The king says, no, I want to give you this special reward. However, I have one thing that I must command you right now. Whatever happens, do not make any wagers. I know people are, here in the castle, people like to bet. Will the king come down today before 11:30? Will it come down after 11:30? Will the king tweet today or not? No, I'm kidding. I'm unrepentant over here. You're taking bets. What's going to happen? I know you like to wager here in the castle. I'm asking you, if you're going to go as a nobleman, do not take any wagers. Is that all right? Your honor, of course. No wagers. Absolutely not. I'm overwhelmed with your kindness. All right. And the king says, I'll see you later, Bob. In the meantime, Bob goes down to the royal haberdashery, and they outfit him with a beautiful suit. They make him on the spot. They've got 5 tailors working. It's custom made. He goes down to the royal bathhouse, and he goes to the spa, and they give him the whole schwitz and the wash and the cold and the hot and the smelling salts and the stuff they beat you with, like in the Russian bathhouses. I don't know, the leaves and the eucalyptus. And I mean, they're cutting his nails. They're taking all the dirt out from underneath his cuticles. He can't believe he's never had any kind of treatment like this. This is like a dream. And then he goes back out of the bathhouse, and they dress him with his new clothing. And the barber comes and makes sure his hair is just so. And he walks out of the castle, and there's a royal carriage waiting, a beautiful gilded royal carriage, and the footmen put him up in the carriage. It's a beautiful thing. And he has an absolutely, absolutely magical evening. The next day, he's walking down the corridor, and guess who bumps into him? The king. And immediately, he bows before the king. My liege, your honor, I can't thank you enough. You gave me the most amazing, magical day of my life. King says, I'm so glad, Bob. You deserved it. But, by the way, did you make any wagers? He says, well, it's funny you should ask. Here's what happened. So I get to the royal ball. And as soon as I walk in, there's music playing, there's a string quartet right by the door. I present my invitation. They bring me in. There's a little trumpet, announces my presence. And I walk in, and there's this big room filled with noble people, all dressed up in their finery. And I notice there's 3 men standing off to the right, and they start pointing at me and laughing at me. All right, listen, maybe somehow they know that I'm really just a servant. Okay, I can handle it. So I go over to the bar, I'll get a drink. I'm going to ignore these people. I'm not going to let them spoil my evening. I'm standing in line at the bar, and they move. They're standing now right over here, and they're pointing to me and laughing and snickering. All right, I get my drink. I say, let me go out to the veranda. They've got some beautiful music playing. There's some hors d'oeuvres. I'll stand over there. These guys, I don't need to be seeing these jokers. So I go out to the veranda. It's beautiful. There's beautifully manicured gardens before me, and I'm having a drink, I'm taking some hors d'oeuvres, it's amazing. These 3 men walk out, and they start pointing to me and laughing at me. And finally, I've had enough. This is my evening. I'm not going to let these guys spoil it. So I just walk right over them. I say, excuse me, gentlemen, what exactly is so funny? What's amusing you? They say, well, we're sorry to make fun of you, but we've never seen a hunchback wearing royal clothing like that before. I said to them, I'm not a hunchback. And they, okay, I'm sorry. Maybe your mother told you that, but you're a hunchback. No, I'm not a hunchback. Yes, you are. No, you're not. And then one says, listen, I will bet you 50,000 gold coins that you're a hunchback. Now hold on a second. 50,000 gold coins in those days is like $50 million. Now he says, Your Honor, I know that you and the kingdom next to you have been sparring for years, and there's all talk about you guys going to war with each other, and I know that your coffers could use some juicing so you can be able to support the army, pay for the army and the uniforms and the weapons. And I know that you told me not to make any wagers, but I said, here's an opportunity for me to be able to give you the money to outfit a whole regiment of soldiers. $50 million, 50,000 gold coins. You need this. So I said, you know what? I'll just make the wager. I make the wager. We're standing on the corner of the veranda. I take off my shirt. They see my back, it's straight. Put back on. They say, okay, here you go. And we walk outside, there's a whole thing. And they literally transfer me a chest of 50,000 gold coins. And guess what, King? I brought it home. It's yours now. Go ahead. Go get a whole regiment. And the king said, you idiot! You fool! You just cost me half my kingdom. Your head is rolling today. So, what do you mean, Your Honor? I did this for you. You didn't do this for me. I told you not to make any wagers. You little stupid fool. You don't understand anything. I had conversations with my neighboring king, and we both said, my subjects will never subject themselves to you, and therefore it's not even worth trying to take my subjects. They'll never, ever bow to you. And he said the same thing. We had a whole conversation about whose subjects are more loyal. And that king said to me, I bet you I can get your most loyal subject to take off his shirt in public. And I said, you're out of your mind. No way, not going to happen. And we bet half of our kingdoms. You just cost me half of my kingdom. You are going to the gallows. Here's what happens with Adam and Chava. God tells them, do not eat from the tree. Now, Adam and Eve are sitting there and thinking, let's see. God told us not to eat from the tree. Big deal. Big deal. It's so easy not to eat from the tree. He's giving us everything. He's giving us millions of different species, and all the animals are so friendly and nice here. We don't eat from the tree? Is that what we're going to go down in history? Just the people who didn't eat the tree? We could do much better than that. We could do much better than that. We could eat from the tree. plunge the world into darkness because they knew that when they ate the tree, the world would drastically change and evil would enter in an unprecedented way. And then, in that evil, evil world, we be the ones who carry the banner of God. We're going to bring such sanctification to God's name because for us not to eat the tree now is no big deal. It's just one little insignificant command. But if we eat from the tree, the lights go out in the world, and we'll be the ones carrying the torch of God, the knight in shining armor on the white stallion, charging through the darkness with the torch in one hand, lighting up the world around him, and the flag of God in the other hand. We will be God's heroes. We will be God's champions. We'll do something heroic for God. God says, you fools. I told you not to eat from the tree. Don't think you know better than me. You don't know what's really at stake. You have no idea what you just plunged this world into. I just lost half my people who are now going to be succumbing to evil all over the world. You will die. This is the prototype of sin. Why is it the prototype of sin? The absolute paradigm of sin for all of eternity. Because every time we sin, what we're saying is, I know that by the book I shouldn't be doing this, but I've got a better way. It's okay, I can always fix it like this, or it's not such a big deal, or God understands. We have a book filled with rationalizations. We know what God wants of us, we know what He asks of us, but we've got a better plan. And it backfires every single time. Let me give you an example, a very painful example. Unfortunately emanated right here from Detroit. In the 60s, Jews started moving out of Detroit. And they started moving to the suburbs. Southfield, Oak Park. People were moving further. West Bloomfield, Farmington Hills. And Shari Zedek moved from downtown Detroit to their campus in Southfield. They wanted to be closer to their people. But there was a problem. When they were in Detroit, all the Jews lived in a very clustered area, whether it was Dexter-Davidson or 7 Mile in Livernois, wherever it was, the Jews lived in a very tightly clustered area, which meant that everybody could easily walk to shul. But now they were in the suburbs. And people were living far away from Shari Zedek's beautiful, brand new building that they spent a ton of money on. And they said, this is what happened. They said, we're going to lose our community because people are not going to be able to get to shul. They're not going to be able to walk to shul because remember, until then, conservative Jews all walked to shul. The conservative movement did not allow driving on Shabbos. But then, and it literally, the conservative movement's heter, so to speak, their allowance to drive on Shabbos came out of Detroit. They said, we know that the Torah says you shall not kindle a fire on Shabbos, and of course when you turn on a car, that's what you're doing. You're lighting fire, and again and again and again, as your spark plugs keep lighting your gas, and every time you hit the gas, more and more and more. We know that God said, thou shalt not kindle a fire on the Sabbath day. But we have a better plan here, because with God's system, we're going to fall apart. We're going to lose our sense of community. People are not going to be able to get to the synagogue because they live 2 miles away, 3 miles away. In the middle of the winter, they're elderly. They can't walk there in the middle of the winter. Some of them, we're going to lose. For God's sake, not for our sake, for God's sake, we want these people to be able to go to shul. We want these people to be able to come to services on Shabbos. So what we're going to allow is we're going to write some sort of responsa saying that you're allowed to drive on Shabbos, but only to shul. Which, by the way, till this very day, is the conservative position officially. You're allowed to drive to shul, you're allowed to drive on Shabbos, but absolutely only to shul. And they did it because they thought they were doing it for God's sake. They wanted to make sure that people could go to shul on Shabbos. We know that God said don't do it, but we've got a better plan. Guess what happened? I think you all know what happened. Today, unfortunately, all over America, the 90% of conservative Jews, at least, drive on Shabbos, and drive pretty much everywhere but shul. It's a reality. Pretty much everywhere but shul. They lost their sense of community. Had they not, by the way, had they not allowed driving on Shabbos, maybe more people would have actually moved into that neighborhood and said, we got to live here because we want to be able to walk to shul on Shabbos, like what happens in the Orthodox communities, where people automatically are all clustered together because we have to walk to shul on Shabbos. So no one's buying a house, or very few people are buying a house 3 miles away from shul. We're much more closer knit together. We all see each other on Shabbos. It's a deeper sense of community. And instead what ended up happening is that today, literally 90% of conservative Jews drive on Shabbos and literally everywhere but shul. If you go to Shari Tzedek on a Shabbos this week, if there's no simcha, if you go to shul there on a Shabbos when there's no simcha, it's unfortunate. It's very sad. Not maybe 150 people, and most of them over the age of 60. They're young, have totally abandoned it. And by the way, this is what I've heard from not one, not two, not three, multiple conservative rabbis who say that the legislation that we wrote, allowing people to drive on Shabbos, was the worst legislation we ever wrote. I don't want to name the rabbis here, but you can come over to me afterwards and I can name you the rabbis who would say it was the worst legislation we ever wrote. It was a big mistake. When we think we know better than God, God said don't speak Lashon Hara, but it's important that I tell this person about that person because this and that, and I just need to get it off my chest. God said don't eat this, but he understands because I'm very hungry. Or he understands because today pigs are not associated with disease anymore. Back in the day, there was strychnine. It was an illness that people got when eating pig. Today, we don't get that anymore. So therefore, I know God said don't eat pig, but he probably meant don't get strychnine. And we're not going to get it today because strychnosis. We're probably not going to get it because today they learned how to butcher pigs in a healthy way, so it's okay. And so on and so forth. It's the root of all sin. Every lie that we tell, we know we're saying a lie. But God will understand because of this and because of that, and I need to do it right now. All the rationalizations. We know what God told us. We know what we're supposed to do. But we create some sort of narrative that essentially says, but I know better in this case. The king told me not to make any wagers, but I know better in this case. And often we tell ourselves we're doing it for him. So that is the original sin. That is the prototype for all sin in the world. Sin is a bad case of a disease called I know better than God. I know what he said, but he didn't live in 2017, so he doesn't really understand our society today. Let's talk about Shabbos for a second, by the way. Shabbos in 2017. Do you realize how unfathomably healthy Shabbos is today? We have a society that is absolutely... We are literally, if you were looking down like an alien, you know what you'd see? A bunch of human beings plugged into a wall, right? Meaning, we're all just like, we're on all the time. Do you know how many times a day the average person takes out their phone? It's insane. I gotta check, I gotta see, we got the Apple Watch. Just because in case my phone is in my pocket, I don't even want to go that far, I just go like this. Oh, this person's texting me, okay, like, Star Trek, what's up? From the morning until the evening, all day, every day. And there's actually a massive article about it in the Atlantic magazine. This current issue. It talks about what the proliferation of smartphones has done to our youth. You should go to theatlantic.com or if you have the magazine, read the article. It's shocking. And then there's this one nation that says for 25 hours, we are on hold. No email, no Facebook, no Snapchat, no Instagram, nothing. How healthy is that for teenagers? It's the teenagers, by the way, who are suffering the most. The anxiety, the depression, the not going out, the not seeing friends. The overall lack of activity, the bullying, the anxiety. So for 25 hours today, you have protection from all that, if you're Shomer Shabbos. But then again, some people say, oh, Shabbos was God... He knows that if he saw people in 20... I can't live without my phone. I can't live without my phone. What if people need to get a hold of me? What if people need to get a hold of me? So again, we know what God said, but we think we know better. We think, not today. Not in 2017. So this is sort of the prototype for sin. But unfortunately, what's so amazing is just how on target God was with things like Shabbos. Forget about it. I wonder like how... it's like, not that I wonder if Shabbos was necessary 2,000 years ago, but like, I feel like it was almost like necessary light compared to what it's like today. God says, Matana Tova, Yesh Li B'Beis Genaz, I have a Shabbos Shema. I've got a good gift in my storehouses and it's called Shabbos. It's never been a greater gift than today. Because we are plugged in all the time and the ability to just plug out and connect with people on a human level. Climb out of our screens for 25 hours. It's like right before Shabbos, we're last minute checking our phones, what's going on, right before Shabbos, before I got to plug it back in. And then we unzip the zipper on our phone, we open up the door, we walk out into real life and put this away. And at least for 25 hours, until Shabbos is over, we make Havdalah, we unzip and we climb back in. But some people say, no, God, it's 2017. He didn't realize that we would need phones so much. Okay. So that is, and by the way, it's an important, when I talk, why is this important for us? It's important for us to be able to hold ourselves in check when we hear the narrative going on in our heads. When we hear the narrative, but not in this case, but God will understand. But all those types of things, when we hear that narrative, let's remember that we're just walking the Adam and Eve story. And we can combat it and say, no, I'm not taking that narrative. I'm not ingesting that narrative. That's idea number one. Okay, idea number two. Let's look at the story of Cain and Abel. Cain and Hevel. Source number one. Bereishis. Perek Dalet, Gimel through Yud, Genesis 4, 3 through 10. Now it came to pass, at the end of days, that Cain brought of the fruit of the soil an offering to the Lord. So Cain was a farmer, and he brought from the fruit of his soil an offering to the Lord. And Abel, he too brought of the firstborn of his flock and of the fattest, and the Lord turned to Abel into his offering. But to Cain and his offering he did not turn, and it annoyed Cain exceedingly, and his countenance fell. And the Lord said to Cain, why are you annoyed, and why is your countenance fallen? Is it not that if you improve, you will be uplifted? If you do not improve, however, at the entrance, sin is lying, and to you is its longing, but you can rule over it. And Cain spoke to Abel his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel and slew him. And the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? And he said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, and God said back to him, what have you done? Listen, your brother's bloods cry out for me from the earth. There's three main points I want to take from this story. Number one, do you realize that, okay, so Cain and Abel both brought offerings, right? And that was the first good deed recorded in the Torah. Do you realize that? The first good deed recorded in the Torah, where someone says, let me make a sacrifice to God, let me do something that's beyond myself, is when Cain brought an offering and then Abel brought a better offering, right? Meaning Abel brought the best of his stuff. Cain said, all right, God, I've got these day-old stuff. My family doesn't eat leftovers. I'll give them to you. There's actually another article I'm just reading right now about the incredible amounts, the unimaginable amounts of food that is literally thrown out in our garbages in America today. The average human in America throws out 3.5 pounds of edible food every week. I'm going to probably write about this in my Shabbos email, so stay tuned. And if you don't get it, feel free to come over to me after, and I'll take down your email. So Cain's like, all right, I got these day-olds, whatever it is. I got some fresh fruit over here. I'll give God my day-olds. And Abel says, that's a beautiful idea to give an offering. I'm going to give the best that I got, my firstborns, the fattest of my flock. So Cain is the first person to do the offering. Abel does it better. These are the first people to do a good deed recorded in the Torah. And what happens to Abel? He's killed for it. Isn't that crazy? The first person to do a good deed that God says, wow, it's beautiful, is killed an hour later. What does that teach us? Don't do good deeds, right? They say crime doesn't pay. Good deeds don't pay. Let me do a good deed over here. Let me thank the good Lord for this amazing H2O. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvaro. Amen.
No good deed goes unpunished.
Exactly. No good deed goes unpunished. So what this teaches us very clearly is that man's reward and punishment centers do not happen in this world. If the very first good deed ever is rewarded, not with death, but he is killed, what we clearly see is that the reward and punishment don't happen in this world. And by the way, that knowledge, and here's, let me break open this misconception. People say, oh, Jews don't believe in hell. You ever heard that before? That's unfortunately not true. I wish we didn't believe in hell. Then I can do whatever I want. I don't gotta worry just because we don't believe in hell. It's okay. So I'm stealing money on Yom Kippur. I don't care. Jews don't believe in hell. So okay, no. So Jews do. We absolutely do. We got tons of sources about it. And I actually am very comforted that we believe in Gehenna and Gan Eden, because otherwise, you look at a person like Hitler. Hitler caused the deaths. There's 6-7 million Jews. It probably wasn't 6. It's probably closer to 7.5, based on some newer research that we're finding. There's mass graves all over Eastern Europe that had not been discovered until recently, and probably the number's closer to 7.5. So he killed 7.5 million, 7 million Jews. On top of that, though, he caused the deaths of over 50 million people, right? The Russians lost 20 million. The Russians would take 14-year-old boys. You know how they would work? They would give one person a gun and 2 bullets, and the next person they'd give him just 2 bullets. And they say, when he gets killed, you'll take his gun. They lost 20 million people. Soldiers. Right? So Hitler's responsible for the death of tens of millions, 50 million people. And yet what happens? He's eating chocolate in his bunker. I don't know if you guys know this, but Hitler was a crazy junk food maniac. He would gobble junk food down. Like, seriously, it's true. I read an article about this. Again, I read an article about this. People write these articles. I don't know why. Maybe just for me to read them because I find them fascinating. But Hitler was a junk food maniac. He loved cake. He loved chocolate. So he's sitting in a bunker somewhere in Germany eating chocolate up to the last day, and then he goes and blows his brains out, and boom. That's the punishment that he gets? No, thank God we believe in Gehenna. Thank God we believe that right now, as we speak, Hitler is suffering excruciating pain. Because this world has to come to justice. Just like we believe in reward, if you want to believe that if you do something right, you'll get rewarded, maybe not in this world, but in the next world, then you have to also believe in punishment. Everything's got to be made whole. You do good deeds, you get return on your good deeds. You do bad deeds, you get return on your bad deeds. But clearly, from the very fact that we see the very first good deed recorded in the Torah, the person who did it is dead an hour later, shows us that this is not where the reward comes. The reward comes up there, where it's A, eternal, and B, far more powerful. Because the emotions, the greatest pleasure we all can feel is not a physical pleasure. It's not a good piece of steak. It's not a nice car, right? Because you can see people have the best steak and the nicest cars and they're miserable. So clearly, that's not what real joy comes from. It's all about emotions and the experiences. So, it's not experience, sorry, intellect and the emotion. So our neshama goes up and gets this incredible reward, far greater than you could ever reward somebody in this world, where all we have to give people is physical stuff. Oh, you did a great deed? Here's a chocolate bar. You know, it doesn't count. So that's the first thing we learn from the story of Cain and Abel. The second thing we learn from the story of Cain and Abel is that originality is not all it's made out to be. Cain was the originator, right? Think about this. Who originated the idea of a sacrifice? Cain. Abel was not a creative guy. He just did his best. And who did God look at? The one who did his best. You don't got to be the innovator. There are people who want to, propose to their fiancés in the craziest of ways. We're gonna jump out of a plane, and while we're both flying down towards Earth at like 5,000 feet per second, I'm gonna yell back up, "Will you marry me?" Oh my God, will you marry me? So original though. We're so cool. Yeah. Do you know how I popped the question? We were like rocketing down to Earth at 5,000 feet a second, and I yelled to her, and then she couldn't hear me, but when we got back down, I just pulled out the box, and there it was, and she knew what I was saying the whole time. It was so cool. You don't got to be so cool. You just got to do your best. You prepare something nice, romantic, beautiful. It may have been done before. It doesn't make a difference. It's about doing your best as opposed to trying to be the original. So just an aside, interesting note to notice over here. God, you don't need to be the originator. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just got to put in your best. It's not about being the most creative, the coolest, who thought, how did you think of that? No. I just saw someone else doing something really beautiful, and I decided to do it too and give it my all. And that is what God looks at with favor. Again, I saw someone else doing something beautiful, and I decided, let me see if I can do that too. And I'll do it my best. That's what God says. That's so beautiful to me. Someone who's inspired by what other people do, tries to do it themselves, amazing. He gets the medal. Next. The verse says, your brother's bloods cry out to me from the earth. Kol demei achicha, which literally translates as your brother's bloods. Now there's actually a fascinating midrash on this that says that when Cain wanted to murder Abel, he didn't know how. Like there was no precedent for killing before in the world. So he didn't know, like, what organ does he have to hit in order to, meaning to kill him. He didn't know. So the midrash records that he stabbed him like hundreds of times because he was just trying to figure out. So one explanation is the bloods of your brother, the many bloods that spurted out of the many holes you pierced in him. But there's another explanation that's given, and it's brought down by Rashi as well. And it says the following. Your brother's bloods. I don't only hear your brother. I hear the children he never had. I hear the grandchildren he never had. And the great-grandchildren. The sound is deafening. God doesn't only look at the little action of what happens right here, but what were the repercussions of that action? Let me tell you a story on the positive side to understand what it means to have the sense of what I'm doing here is not for right here, but for generations. There's a great rabbi, his name is Rabbi Shlomo Freifeld. He was the founder of the yeshiva that I went to, Shar Yashiv. And he is, like, if I could meet any rabbi in history, it would probably be him. If I met like Moses or one of these people, I'd be blown away by their greatness. I wouldn't be able to talk to them. It would be not even a conversation. But he lived recently, and he was just an incredible, incredible human being. So there's a story where there was a boy who had grown up in not just a very religious family, but a rabbinical family. He grew up in a very rabbinical family. He was a very bright boy. His whole family was highly, highly motivated and talented and successful, and they were all becoming miniature rabbis, and the pressure just got to him. And he started hanging out with the wrong people, started smoking a little of this, taking a little of that, and before you know it, he had walked off from the faith altogether. You know, he left his parents' home, he moved out, he was hanging with all kinds of people, doing all kinds of things, and he had given up on his Judaism entirely. But he didn't have great luck out there, he wasn't very successful out there, and he was basically, at some point, he was hungry, he didn't have food, he didn't have money, he needed a job. So he's looking in the newspaper for a job, and he sees there's an ad there, they want a janitor at this place called Shar Yashiv. He says, all right, I'll go in to be a janitor. And he walks in, he's got torn jeans and a t-shirt, long hair, right? And he walks in and he says, I'd like to apply for the job as the janitor. So they say, okay, sure. So somehow Rabbi Freifeld himself was conducting the interview. And he notices the boy's name. He said, I see your name here is, Jack Rabinowitz. Or Rabinowitz, there's a famous Rabinowitz family that lives in Brooklyn. He said, yeah, I know them. Are you related? No, that's my family. Really? Your father's this rabbi? Yeah. Okay. They start asking all kinds of questions. How are you doing? Whatever. What are you up to? Rabbi Freifeld gets the picture very quickly. And he says to the young man, he says, you know what? I would like to hire you. But not as a janitor. He says, you know a ton. You know a ton of Torah. You grew up, you went to cheder, you went to yeshiva. You're a bright guy. I have a couple guys in my yeshiva that do not have the same Jewish background that you have, the same Jewish education that you have. I'm going to hire you, but not as a janitor. I'm going to hire you as a rabbi to teach these students. And the guy looks at the rabbi and says, Rabbi, me? Rabbi, do you see me? Rabbi says, yeah, I see you. I don't care. I'm hiring you as a rabbi. And the guy said, Rabbi, I don't wear a yarmulke. Rabbi Freifeld said, did I ask you to wear a yarmulke? I didn't tell you to wear a yarmulke. I didn't tell you to wear tzitzis. I didn't tell you to put on a suit. I didn't tell you to put on a shirt or shoes. You come as you want. I want your mind. I don't care how you look. You're a brilliant guy, and I think you'll be really talented at teaching. The guy says, listen, Rabbi, thanks. I kind of appreciate the offer. It's nice of you and all, but I don't want that job. I want the job as the janitor. The Rabbi said, the janitor job is not available. But I'll pay you a little bit more as a teacher. So the guy's thinking about it. He says, you know what? Listen, this rabbi must be crazy, but if that's what he wants, I don't care. I need the money, right? I gotta support my weed habit, right? I'll do whatever it takes. Fine. You know what? It's easier work than janitoring. I don't gotta walk around with a mop and a broom. I just sit in a room and talk to a bunch of students and teach them. If that's what he wants and he's willing to pay me more, fine. So the rabbi says, okay, great. When are you going to start? This is Monday. Okay, great. Thank you. You'll be here Monday at 3 o'clock. I have 4 students that I want you to teach. And you'll teach them Mishnayos, not something very deep, not something very difficult. I want you to teach them. Monday morning comes. This guy's about to go to his new job. And he says, you know what? Look, I'm going into this school. It's a yeshiva. I'll put on a yarmulke. I'm not going to walk in with a bare head to the yeshiva and start teaching. I'll just put on a yarmulke. Okay, he goes in. And sure enough, the first day he walks in, long hair, yarmulke, t-shirt, jeans, sandals, no socks. Well, that's the right way to go with sandals, but okay. Don't you love the sandals and socks look? That's one of the classic looks. Okay. So he goes to yeshiva the first day, long stringy hair, yarmulke, t-shirt, jeans, ripped jeans, and sandals. And he walks in, and the rabbi says, oh, Yaakov, it's so good to see you. Rabbi Yaakov, come over here. And he takes him to a room, and sure enough, there are 4 students, and they came from backgrounds, they didn't have as much of a background, and he starts teaching them Mishnayos. And this guy knew this stuff, like cold. He grew up with it, he ate this stuff when he was a kid. He was a very bright person, he came from a family filled with bright people. So he starts teaching it, and they're asking questions, and he's answering, and they're getting, he walks away the first day, he's like, wow, I can do this. This is cool. I actually enjoyed myself. They were asking questions, and it was very enjoyable. Comes back the next day. After about a week, he says, you know what? If I'm teaching in yeshiva, the rabbi didn't ask anything of me, but I probably should wear tzitzis. I've got this t-shirt with nothing hanging. I'll just put on a pair of tzitzis. So the next week he comes in, yarmulke, long stringy hair, t-shirt, tzitzis, ripped jeans, sandals, no shoes, no socks. All right. But this goes on, and he starts teaching, and he's enjoying it, and they love studying with him, because here, they're expecting to study with this, stuffy rabbi with a beard and this and that, and they're studying with this dude. Like, this guy's like super cool. This guy's he goes to the same shows they're going. He goes to the same music shows, and he knows the sports, and he's a cool guy. Maybe they'd smoke a joint after class, A week goes by, 2 weeks goes by. Slowly, his t-shirt changes to a button-down shirt. He puts on some shoes and some socks. And he starts wearing pants instead of jeans. Today, that man is a rabbi living in Israel. And he's been teaching for decades. He has taught hundreds of students. He has a large, beautiful family. And they're all doing amazing things. That's the power of how God looks at this world. Just like when it was the negative with Cain, and God says, I hear the bloods of your brother, because I don't just hear your brother who you killed, but I hear his children that were never born, and his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren, and his great-great-grandchildren. So too, God says, when you do a kind act, I see the entire ripple effect. I see how it affected that person. Think about how many lives Rabbi Freifeld saved by just believing in this person, and giving him the encouragement, and being accepting of him as he was. And I don't care how you look. I just want to give you, I want your mind and your heart. I don't care about how you look. And he gave him the job, and he changed not only his life, but his children's lives, and his hundreds and hundreds of students' lives, and their children. And it's incredible. You cannot imagine, you cannot calculate the ROI, the return on investment on that one good deed. That's how God views the world. And when we do something kind to someone else, we just say a kind word. That's it. Forget bake cookies and bring it over. Forget about that. You see somebody in the supermarket and you say, hey, I just saw your kids the other day. You did an amazing job. They're just amazing kids. And they say, oh, thank you so much. They walk out. They're feeling a little more happy. They say something nice to this person. They're a little nicer to their husband that night. But you have no idea where it goes. You have no idea. Every action we have is not just a limited action. That's the tiny mini scope. God's got the 30,000 eye view. He sees way out. So every good action that we do can be multiplied times 5, times 10, times 100, times 200. We have no idea. Okay. One last message. Let's try to cover up nakedness for a moment. We got the time, I guess. Okay. Why is Judaism so fixated on modesty? Right? I don't know if you know this week, but with the whole Harvey Weinstein thing, so Mayim Bialik, who's a Jewish actress, came out and she was talking about how horrible it was and talking about how men have to do this, and all kinds of things. One of the things she said is, she mentioned that it would be a good thing for women to dress more modest. And boom, the media went nuts at her. You're blaming the victim, how dare you blame the victim, blah, 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 blah. It's like, whoa. And by the way, obviously, no man should ever behave in any way near what he did or anything even remotely close to it. However, to explain what Mayim Bialik might have been saying, if I let's say I live in a mixed neighborhood, and I put $1,000 in cash out on my front yard, and I just go to bed at night, but I've got a video camera videotaping it, do you think that money will be there in the morning? No. But I've got a video camera, and now what I do is I go to the police and I say, look at this man. Here, I got a perfect, clear picture of his face and everything. He stole my money. I want you to go take him and put him in prison. I'm like, all right, this is a little weird, but we'll look him up. The next night, I put $1,000 cash, 10 Benjamins, right out on my front lawn. Got the video camera. Is it going to be there in the morning? No. And then I say, call up the cop. Excuse me, please go. This person stole from me. I want you to put him in prison. After a while, they're going to say, hey, buddy, stop putting $1,000 out on the lawn. I'm not, are you blaming the victim? You're blaming me? What, no one's allowed to steal from me under any circumstances ever. And they'll say, you're right, no one's allowed to steal from you under any circumstances ever, but it would be helpful if you stopped putting $1,000 on the lawn every night. All right, that's all I'm going to say for this matter. Now, let's talk for a little bit about modesty. Why is Judaism fixated on modesty? If God gave me a beautiful body, why shouldn't I showcase it? Why shouldn't I showcase it? God gave me a gift. He gave me a beautiful body. Let me share it with the world. Right? What do we have against nudity? We should just, everyone be happy. If you want to, you could. If you don't want to, you shouldn't. But why does Judaism have any sort of idea or conversation about modesty? Okay, let's look at the sources and we'll get to the bottom of this. Source number 2, Genesis 2:20 through 25. And man named all the cattle and the fowl, the heavens and the beasts of the field. But for man, he did not find a helpmate opposite him. And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon man, and he slept, and he took one of his sides, and he closed the flesh in its place. And the Lord God built the side that he had taken from man into a woman, and he brought her to man. And man said, this time it is bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. This one shall be called Isha, woman, because she was taken from Ish, from man. Therefore a man shall leave his mother and father, and cleave to his wife, and they will become one flesh. So far, this is the story of the creation of Adam and Eve. We don't know anything, there's no narrative about them yet, just how they were created. Now comes the very first thing we learn about Adam and Eve. Now they were both naked, the man and his wife, and they were not ashamed. So the absolute first thing the Torah tells you about Adam and Eve is that they were naked and they were not ashamed. Now let's read about what happens by the sin. Source number 3, Genesis 3:6 through 7. And the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and the tree was desirable to make one wise. So she took of its fruit, and she ate, and she gave also to her husband with her, and he ate. So they ate, and what is the first thing the Torah tells you after the sin? And the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves and made themselves girdles. So the very first thing it tells you after they were born is that they were naked and not ashamed. The very first thing it tells you after they sinned is they were naked and they were ashamed and they covered themselves. And then, God comes to them and says, where are you? And Adam says, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I am naked, so I hid. And God says, who told you that you are naked? Did you eat from the fruit of the tree that I commanded you not to eat? So it's almost like the proof. God says, you knew you were naked? You must have eaten from the fruit. So there's something here, this nakedness here plays a major role in the story. What's the deal? So, let's understand. When Adam and Eve were born, or created, what's more important, your body or your soul? Your soul. When Adam and Eve were created at first, their bodies, according to some midrashic explanations, whether you take this as metaphor, were literally almost translucent. It was like their bodies were like this beautiful casing for the soul. And when I looked at somebody, I would just see this beautiful soul. Their body would just be a little beautiful case around it. Like imagine you have in your house, you have a case to hold all your silver. You want a nice case to hold your silver. The main thing is the silver, right? You have a beautiful case and it's got a light and it's so beautiful and it just enhances the whole thing. So when Adam and Eve looked at each other, what did they see? They saw these radiant, beautiful souls encased in a beautiful body. But shining, louder, brighter than anything else was the soul. And there was nothing to be embarrassed of. I look at you, I see you, you look at me, you see me, there's nothing to be ashamed. However, when they ate from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they changed the world's very essence drastically. Because the way the world was supposed to look is you should be able to look at something and see exactly what it was. Which means that in real life, when a person's walking down the street and they see someone else's wife, she should look horrible to him. Like, no, don't look at that. Don't enjoy that. That's not for you. When Adam and Eve saw the fruit of the tree the tree of knowledge of good and evil, what they should have seen is, no, don't touch me, don't touch me. God said stay away. Big poison labels all over the place. But that's not what they saw. We read the source. What it says is that she saw the tree was good for food, it was delight to the eyes. It wasn't supposed to be a delight to the eyes. The only reason why it was a delight to the eyes is because she wanted to do something wrong. And she was choosing to look at the external properties of that apple as opposed to the internal properties of that apple. The internal properties of this apple were saying, vile, poison, stay away, stay away. The external properties, oh, look at that beautiful fruit. It's so beautiful. It's such a delight to the eyes. When they ate from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they changed the world because what they did in their decision is they said, we are choosing the externals of something over the internals. And God said, fine. You want to choose externals instead of internals? That's what you're going to see now. And as soon as they ate from the tree of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, suddenly you couldn't see their internals anymore. They physically, what they saw before the tree and after the tree was very different. Before the tree, before they ate from the fruit, they would look at each other and see this beautiful internal soul encased in like a semi-translucent body. After they ate from the tree, they just saw a body. And as soon as they realized they're like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I don't want you to see me as a body. I'm not a body, I'm a human being. I'm a human being. I'm filled with so much to know and to talk to and to ideas and emotions. I don't want you to see a body. Right away they covered over their bodies. In Hebrew, the word for clothing is levush, which is a contraction of the words lo bosh. I don't want to be embarrassed. When you look at me and you see a body, that's horrifying to me. Because you've cut me down from everything that I am internally to a body? Really? Imagine you have a woman, she's a researcher at Harvard. She spent her whole life, she wanted to be a doctor, and then she wanted to be a doctor who does research, and she's researching in Harvard, and she's teaching medical school students, and she's discovered the cure to Ebola. I mean, she's doing incredible things all over the world. And she's literally going to African countries and curing them of this disease and that disease, and she's going to South America to cure. She's taking all kinds of rare diseases from all over the world and curing them in the third world countries. And she walks into a classroom in Harvard. And one of the students in the back, some guy, says to his friend, check out that professor. She's got a hot body. What an embarrassment. She would be so offended if she heard that. How dare you talk about me like I'm a body? I'm not a body. I'm Dr. Beth. I've cured diseases. I want to teach you. I want to help you. I'm not a body. How dare you describe me like that? How dare you? It's so demeaning to me as a human being. I'm so much more than an external body. When Adam and Eve, after the sin, they no longer saw each other's internals. They just saw externals. They were horrified. Don't you dare see me as this. This is not me. You want to know me? Talk to me. Have a conversation. We never cover over our faces. You know that? In Judaism, we don't cover over our faces. We don't wear hijabs and burqas, and we don't wear that stuff. Because you want to get to know me? The panim, the face of somebody, is their entryway to their panim, their inside, their internals. So we don't cover this, because this is your gateway to getting to know me on the inside. My expressions, my conversation. Adam and Eve, as soon as they looked at each other and saw bodies, they were horrified. I would be so ashamed if all you saw in me was a body. The reason why in Judaism we have rules of modesty is because we have such value for humanity and who people are. And when externals are out there, that's what people focus on. When externals are out there, because we are a very external-driven humanity. That's the way we've been ever since the tree, ever since we chose the external look of the fruit over the internal. So in Judaism we say, in order for us to have our dignity, we need to cover over the external, so that you should be forced to get to know me. Don't you dare ever judge me by my body. For the good, for the bad, it's absurd. Nothing. I would be very embarrassed. We put on levush. We put on clothing, so we should be low bosh. We should not be embarrassed that somebody should cut me down and see me as a human being, which is an incredible neshama filled with light and love and joy and emotion and challenges and meaning, and you cut it down to, that's a 4. That's a 9. That's the idea of modesty in Judaism. And as soon as Adam and Eve said, we knew we were naked, God says, if you're seeing a body, you're not seeing internals, you must have eaten from the tree. You must have chosen the external view of something as opposed to the internal view, and that's why now your vision is distorted. That's how God, so to speak, catches them. You see a body? You must have chosen the externals over the internals. Our job is to try to get to the place before the sin. We have to try to get back to a world where we're pre-sin, where every time we look at a human being, we don't look at all the externals. We see the real person for who they are. We have to try to get back to a place where we see the vision of Adam and Eve pre-sin, where I look at a human being and I see this incredible neshama, this incredible soul, filled with meaning and passion and challenges and sorrow and joy, and never, God forbid, see people for their externals. So that is pretty much it for today. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Hope to see you all next week.